First of all, I'd like to thank, I would say that we are very honored to be able to hold our small side event at the venue of the IGC TC Osaka 2023 itself. And we would like to express our deepest gratitude to Professor Takashi Yamazaki and all the people involved in organizing this side event and the main event. My intervention should be fairly short in that right to stay and infrastructure development. It has been warned that up to 1.2 billion people worldwide could be displaced as climate migrants by 2050. And these climate migrants should have the right to stay, namely, the right to remain in their home countries instead of moving abroad. And the infrastructure development should be considered as an effective measure to ensure their right to stay. Case of Maldives. The Maldives, an atoll country in the Indian Ocean, has decided to build a new land called Hulhumalé in an atoll just off the capital, Malé. The plan is to move about half of the country's population to Hulhumalé. And the two colleagues, two guests from Maldives, would elaborate it shortly. And this is a promising option for dealing with climate change for atoll countries. In this session, we'll present and discuss the reasons for the need to build Hulhumalé and how the people who have moved to Hulhumalé rate their living conditions based on studies conducted in the field. And the conclusion of this session will provide useful insight into the potential of building artificial islands as a climate change adaptation measure in other atoll countries, such as Kiribati, the Marshall Islands, and Tuvalu, as well as for achieving the global goals outlined in the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction between 2015 and 2030. Questions to be asked and answered. For example, can other atoll countries replicate the success of Hulhumalé development by the Maldives? If it does not seem feasible or possible, what kind of inputs are needed to make it happen? If and how should developed countries support atoll countries' desire, if any, to develop Hulhumalé-like island? Lastly, is a proposed loss and damage fund appropriate to assist atoll countries in developing islands to cope with expected sea level rise? For this session, we have two speakers, two researchers from Maldives, belonging to the Housing Development Corporation of Maldives, which is in charge of the development and management of Hulhumalé. They participate as speakers and panelists in this session, along with scientists from Finland, Japan, and the United States. This is the agenda. We will have three presentations, short presentations, including mine, and we will have some 50 minutes for panel discussions to be moderated by Dr. Miko Maekawa of the Sasaka Peace Foundation. And at the very end, on behalf of one of the three host organizations, Professor Daisuke Sasaki of the Tohoku University will give us the closing remark. Well, having said that, we should move to the second presentation, Hulhumalé development by Housing Development Corporation. And Lyra and Alicia, you have floor.
Welcome all. We are going to explain or we are going to talk about how Hulhumalé has been developed and how the migration has happened. So I'm Laila. I'm working in Housing Development Corporation as a research analyst. And this is Arisha.
Hello everyone, my name is Arisha and I also work as a research analyst at Housing Development Corporation. So before we begin, I would like to start with a question from everybody here in the audience. Has anybody visited Maldives or visited Hulhumalé?
Not yet.
Oh, okay, alright, okay. I hope this session would be informative to you. Okay, we can begin.
Yes. Okay. So I will go through about Hulhumalé and why Hulhumalé was constructed, what happened after that, and then due to huge demand, the phase 2 also has been constructed, and what is our future plans we will explain. Okay. So this is how Maldives look like. So it's a scattered island nation. It includes 1190 islands altogether. Out of that, 185 islands people live. So all other islands are uninhabited. So where Hulhumalé located is, you can see there is a red dot, which is the capital of Malé, capital of Maldives, which is called Malé, and very nearby, this is the Hulhumalé, which is the biggest one. So the Hulhumalé is now connected with a bridge from the capital, so it's a very easy and accessible place. Okay. So what is Hulhumalé or about Hulhumalé? So it's actually an artificial island, I will say, because previously I will show how previously the place was looked like and then afterwards what happened. So what we did was the sand was pumped from the sea in order to develop this island. Sorry, since it's a live event, this kind of things will happen. Okay. What is our role actually in developing Hulhumalé? This is our company name is HDC, that is Hulhumalé Development Corporation. So we are the master developer, builder and regulator of development of Hulhumalé. So everything which has been developed until now is the plan from HDC. So Hulhumalé is the very first city which we are developing as a smart city. Actually. So what happened when the government decided to develop Hulhumalé, they formulated a Hulhumalé development unit first, and afterwards, since there was a huge migration happening, so the unit was formulated as the Hulhumalé Development Corporation. However, since we are not only focusing on housing, not focusing on Hulhumalé itself, then the company name was renamed as Housing Development Corporation. And it is 100% state-owned company. And now we are serving, apart from Hulhumalé, other area as well to develop the master plans. So about Hulhumalé, most developed urban city in the country we can say. And Hulhumalé is being developed in 2 phases, which are separately by a channel connected bridges. So each phase there is a small bridges which connectivity is in place. Currently about 50% of phase 1 we have already completed, and we are planning to finish the whole operation of phase 1 only in 2026. So what is unique or what is there in Hulhumalé? There is an interconnectivity. So public transport is available. It's all bus services is also available. It's very convenient. And in the case of open spaces, it's we have maintained certain green space index at a certain level in order to make it more friendly to the people. And people are saying that it's clean air because the congestion as well as traffic is also lower in Hulhumalé. And currently we are focusing on 3 dimensions. That is, it should be a live place, that people should live there. The Hulhumalé should be a workplace, people should get certain jobs in there, and definitely the play park is there. So these 3 dimension was taken into consideration when we are developing Hulhumalé. In the case of smart initiative, I think Ari will be more.
So we recently developed a smart city initiative from Housing Development Corporation. I think it started in 2019. So we're currently focusing on the smart infrastructure. So we've actually developed our own fiber network in phase 2 of Hulhumalé. So all the other network operators can use our network as a backbone. So this is a more sustainable way because it's a shared network. And another thing that we're doing is the mobile cellular towers and street poles. We are actually mandating the carriers to use one single tower. So there won't be multiple towers in Hulhumalé. So the second thing is a smart economy, where we actually have a smart city partnership program where we provide funding and also we encourage small to medium enterprises to come up with digital solutions and partner with us to efficiently manage the municipal systems and everything. And another thing is smart governance. We are very focused on data-driven decisions to improve our city management. And we have also digitized all our municipal platforms, customer-related platforms. So all the customers of HDC can pay and use all the services digitally. Another thing that we're focusing is smart mobility. Currently, one of the main problems that we are facing is because so many people have migrated to Hulhumalé. One of the main issue is parking problems and also optimizing vehicle flow. So one of the things that we are currently working on is smart parking management, and we've identified locations for this and we've come up with a pilot project, and it's going on very successfully, especially for the industrial vehicles. Like we've experienced a boom in the industrial vehicle permits in Hulhumalé. So the other area is smart living. One of the housing projects we did was in phase 2, which is the most high-rise apartment complexes in Hulhumalé. So it's about 25 floors and 6,466 apartments in phase 2. So what we are identifying is people are having problems with this high-rise building. So what we're trying to do is automate the home solutions so we can make it as easy and efficient for them. And another thing that we're focusing is smart environment. We're trying to put in more solar panels, solar energy saving, as well as efficient waste management system. So what we're using is LoRaWare. It's called a low range. It uses sensors to identify whether dustbins are full in the city, and then the waste collectors can collect it on time and empty the bins. So that's something that we are focusing on as smart city initiatives. And there are more upcoming plans as well. These are the current areas. Our main focus right now is the infrastructure part.
Yeah, and then why Hulhumalé was developed, I will show in pictures in a few while why it has been developed, but before that I will just give a highlight why Hulhumalé has to be come up. In the case of in the country Mali, the capital island serves all the services actually. The health service is good, education services. So this lead people to migrate to Mali itself, and then the place was congested heavily. So there was a necessity that another place like Mali should be developed in order to mitigate this kind of congestion. So that's the reason why the government has taken this section, and 1997 was where it began, actually this idea came up. So ultimately they decided to reclaim the city and construct the new place like Moale. However, with taking the consideration that the sea level is also rising, so when we developed the Hulhumalé, this factor was considered and the island was developed 2 meters above the sea level also. Okay, this is how Male looks like. This is very congested. Almost 1/3, 2/3 of the population living here, or what we can say, 200,000 people are living in here itself. Okay, this is before Hulhumalé was developed. You can see the lagoon area, which is next to the airport. So this is where Hulhumalé is now, actually. So integration happened in 1997. This is the time when they have reclaim ongoing. Ultimately, so this is in phase 1. Before people decided, they have already constructed the road and everything in order for the people to be lived in there. Okay, so this is the satellite images or from the drone images, how the construction has been done over time, what is the changes, how the population has moved. You can see there are trees also now, houses is also built, and the phase 2 is also there in 2018 itself. What happened in Hulhumalé, the migration? You can see a huge peak of population. However, we haven't reached 230,000 yet, but that is our estimate in order to bring the population to Hulhumalé. Currently, it's around 80,000 people are residing in Hulhumalé, phase 1 and phase 2. In the case of phase 2, because there was a huge demand for phase 1, the phase 2 also has been constructed. Initially initiated in 2015, almost 216 hectares were reclaimed. And phase 2, about only 5% has been completed yet. So in the phase 2, the majority of the places is currently mass social housing, which is a 25 high-rise building, and the SOE staff housing units are currently there. There are few commercial areas as well, however we are in the process of developing these things. So altogether phase 1 and phase 2 we have already reclaimed 407 hectares altogether. What is our future plan? Currently our future, we are planning to bring a local tourism to the city so that we will have the work in place so that people can get jobs easily in there. We are planning to have a cricket stadium, which is to have the Olympic level stadium, and then Tilafushi is very nearby, which is an industrial island which we are also planning to develop. So this is how it will be looked when the final plan will come. The urban isle, which we call tourism island. This is the model of the cricket stadium, which we are foreseeing to develop as well. And this is the Tilafushi, which is the industrial island, which we are recording currently. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Laila and Alicia, for the presentation. And we carried out a survey about the livelihood of the residents who have moved to Hulhumalé. And two of my colleagues, Daisuke and Akiko, will show what kind of findings we have secured so far.
I'm sorry. So, thank you very much for the opportunity to present the results of the joint research between HTC, GF Japan, and Tohoku University. I'm Akiko Sakamoto from GF Japan. So, the background and objectives. The HTC, GF Japan, and Tohoku University jointly conducted a survey of Hulhumalé residents in August and September 2022. The aim of the survey was to find out how the residents of Hulhumalé valued life in Hulhumalé after moving there. So the method of study, the questionnaire included 11 questions about the respondents' attributes and 32 questions about their housing and other aspects of their lives after moving to Hulhumalé. 252 Hulhumalé residents participated in the web-based survey. So let me explain the attributes of the respondents. So the age, about half of the respondents are under 40 years old. And the gender was almost 50-50. So educational background, more than half were first degree and above. it seems to be higher than the average of Maldivians. So year of migration. Migrants rapidly increased after 2021. So this is related to the fact that the immigration to the phase 2 area has started in this year. So pre-migration settlement, 76 were from Malé, the capital city of the Maldives. So occupation, so professional, scientific, technical workers emerged after migration. So annual personal income increased after migration. It has a relation to the above mentioned newly developed high-valued occupation. Person decided to migrate. About 60% answered the family. So intention to settle in Hulhumalé, 70% answered yes. So method of study, 3 methods for analysis were applied for this study, namely the ordinary statistical analysis, the permutation future importance, and structural equation modelings. So for the ordinary statistical analysis, respondents were divided into 2 groups according to age, gender, education, place of origin, income, and intention to return to their place of origin, and the characteristics of each group were statistically analyzed. So the life satisfaction. So life satisfaction has improved. The average before migration was 3.0, and the average after migration was 3.7. So who are more satisfied after migration? So more satisfied group was who has an intent to settle in Hulhumalé, and high personal annual income both before and after migration, and migrated from Malé. So less satisfied people were the intent to return to their original place and migrated from other than Malé and older group. So the migrated from other than Malé are not so satisfied seems to be the problem. So these are the items rated high and low. The top rated the highest is the utility infrastructure, and the lowest is the rent of house acquisition cost. So in total, the cost they are dissatisfied. So let me explain some findings. So comparison between original place, Malé or other than Malé, is great. So migrants from Malé highly evaluated the satisfaction after migration and clean new home and no air and water pollution. So migrants from other than Malé highly evaluate the good job and wide choice of entertainment and good education. So those who do not evaluate the benefits from the city, so about good job, so older group and female evaluate less than the opponent groups. So the good education and the migrants from Malé. So medical care, such as the number of hospitals and the quality of hospitals, and healthy condition includes the sports facilities or the pollution, no pollution. So the older group and the low annual personal income group value less. So the sustainability. The sustainability is the 3 questions: safe against sea level rise, and territorial integrity, and resilient to natural disasters. So unfortunately, these items are not evaluated especially high, because the median is 3 and the mean is almost 3 and the rank is middle. So promoting these items is important for future development of Hulhumalé. So the environment, so no air and water pollution and clean living environment and beautiful and rich natural surroundings. These three items are so evaluated very high, regardless of the attributes. So especially high evaluated by the females and migrants from Malay and high income group and people with the intention to settle in the city. So the environment is one of the most important aspects of urban development in Hulhumalé in the future. So the infrastructure, so utility infrastructure is the highest valued item questions. So especially high personal annual income group rated this high. And sports facilities and parks and the fourth. And the transportation in the island was also the fourth, especially supported by younger group. And transport links abroad is is fourth. So the transportation seems to be one of the key items for the Hulhumalé in the future. So there are, of course, the dissatisfaction. So regardless of the attributes, so rent or house acquisition cost and the cost of living and safeguarded by police, the ranked very low. So the improvement of these three items seems to be very important. So,
okay, thank you, Akiko-san. This slide shows the basic concept of the permutation feature importance called PFI. Permutation feature importance measures the amount of increase in the model's prediction error after rearranging the future values and breaking the relationship between the feature and the true outcome. The importance of the feature is measured by the calculating the amount of increase in the model's prediction error after rearranging the feature values. So feature is important if shuffling its value increases the model's error, since the model relies on that feature to make predictions. Then the model is making predictions without regard to the feature, so it shuffling does not change the model error. The feature is considered important. Okay, this slide shows the procedures for PFI. First step is the model is constructed using the extreme gradient boosting algorithm with the answers to question 2. Question 2 means the satisfaction after migration, as this variable is an objective variable. And to answers to all the other questions served as exploratory variables, independent variables. And the permutation feature importance is applied to the calibrated model to identify the exploratory variables for the outstanding factors. Okay, this one shows the result of the PFI analysis. The top 5 contributing exploratory variables determined by PFI are shown here in order of contribution. The top one is the clean new home, and followed by resilient to natural disasters, sports facilities and parks, no air and water pollution, and territorial integrity. This is a result of the PFI. And the next slide shows the basic concept of the structural image modeling, SEM. Yes, structural image modeling, SEM, can represent the whole structure of the relationship among variables. And the same can be used to assess latent variables that are not observable, such as one's subconscious in psychology. And same can be applied in confirmatory factor analysis, verifying whether the hypothesis is true or not. Okay, this is an example of the same. I'll skip this page. Okay, and what is the benefit of adapting SEM? According to the previous study, Tauga and published in 2018, we can measure latent variables indirectly, mostly with the use of the set of observable variables and via observation of the causal effect in SEM between respective relative variables. Okay, this is the result of the SEM in this study. We can find there are four relative variables, four factors in the right-hand side. The F2, the top left, F2 is so we can interpret this relative variable as the relative variable related to the environment, because the X11 means related to the livelihood, and the bottom right F4 related to the environment, because the X6 to X9 related to the environment observables. So from based on this result, the relative factors related to environment and livelihoods influences the satisfaction of this migration. Okay, thank you for listening.
Well, thank you very much, Daisuke and Akiko. Now it's time to have a panel discussion, say for 40 minutes. And Dr. Miko Maekawa of the Sasaka Peace Foundation will chair the session. Miko, you have the floor. And all the panelists should come forward. And I believe we need one more chair. So.
Well, thank you very much for the kind introduction. My name is Miko Maekawa, Senior Research Fellow at the Sasaka Peace Foundation. And we have great panelists here. Thank you very much for staying until this late time. We all hope that we will have an opportunity soon to visit the Maldives, the beautiful islands. The ones who've been there, including myself. Right, we have about 40 minutes to have discussions for under this theme. First, I would like to invite all the panelists to say a few words. What are your first reaction to the presentations, comments, questions, points that you would like to discuss at this forum? How about if we start with Uha, please? Yes, please.
Thanks. Thank you, Akiko, and thank you, presenters. It's actually very difficult to comment, except it's a very fascinating project, right? This is amazing, and to me it's quite unique. There's this whole idea, or the whole thing about the small island developing states, right? That Maldives has graduated from the least developed state, least developed country state, and there is a certain amount of money that is put into these kind of things. Right, so I don't know how feasible all of this is for everywhere in the world, but it is really wonderful. I think that that there is internal migration to these places at quite a large scale, and so on. I think that is that will have to be a very important dimension of future developments in these kind of things. Of course, in the UNFCCC, there has been a major shift from just mitigation to adaptation, and some people think that it is a sort of like giving up. That it's something that we have to, okay, now we have given up on mitigating climate change. But that's not, to me, it's not the point. The point is that we have to do both. And this is an unbelievable effort towards adaptation, right? And we have to do these kind of things. And you gotta have some kind of technological solutions, which this is one. This is a stunning one. This is, to me, it's a stunning one. But we have to really work on these kind of issues, and I think that's amazing.
Thank you very much. Well, Mr. Uka-Uito is from the Independent Evaluation Office of the Global Environment Facility. Right, so Professor Fujikura from the Hosei University, Professor Fujikura, if you have any reaction to the presenters.
Thank you. I'm Fujikura from Hosei University. I am interested in, or I have a concern about the cost. Who pays how much to the project? So according to the Financial Times, a Chinese state-owned company has loaned about $550 million to finance the construction of 11,000 apartments in high-rise buildings to be built in the second phase of Hulhumalé. And I found a World Bank report titled Maldives Development Update, published in the last year. It states the government exposure from external loans and guarantees associated with public housing is estimated at nearly $1 billion or approximately 19% of GDP as of 2020. And 86% of the debt is due to Chinese lenders. And it also states that housing ownership is unaffordable for most Maldivians, especially in the Greater Malay region, forcing the majority of the population to resort to renting. And rental prices are also out of reach for many households, leading multiple families to co-inhabit the same unit. So in the previous sessions, previous presentations, the Maldivian people are not satisfied with the cost of the living. So that I'm wondering whether the findings of the World Bank report is correct or not. But we must take the cost always into the consideration. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Mr. Carl Brook from the Environmental Law Institute, please.
I am very impressed. I have all sorts of questions. It's a very ambitious endeavor. I think as a starting point, I think it's important to note that it's become fairly common in policy circles around climate change to say that migration is an adaptive measure. One way we deal with climate change, and particularly sea level rise, is we move. And I think this is another option. And I think that that is something that is very interesting. Technically, I mean, I have all sorts of questions. So you put the sand up there, do you stabilize it? How do you make sure that it doesn't erode away? All sorts of questions like that. I'm also wondering, I like the description, you talked about the evidence-based decision-making. You didn't talk about, but I wonder if it's implicit in there, what sort of adaptive cycles do you have, where you can learn from the evidence and then say, this isn't working so well. Maybe we should try something differently. Could you talk a little bit about that? Because I think that humanity, I'm not talking about Maldivians, I'm talking about the rest of us, don't have a very good engineering and large-scale social, a very good track record when it comes to large-scale social engineering. It's like, okay, here's a new city, and you know, all these different ideas. Some will work better than others. And I'm wondering, can you talk a little bit about how you look at, you know, what's working, what's not, and how do you adapt? And then I was also curious about 80,000 people moved. That's a lot of people. And it looked like, based on the surveys, that those might be some of the more educated individuals. In light of, you know, cost questions, I'd be very curious about your answers on cost. But who are the next 200,000? You know, what do they look like in your opinion? Are they kind of looking like the first 80, or how do you get people that may not have quite the same level of education into the space? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Would you like to answer those questions, or you also would like to, you know, respond to, you know, other presenters and raise points?
I think I will respond to the presenters, and then we can answer.
Yes, please.
Actually, based on the presentation, especially from the presentation, we found that the environment factor was the most important factor that people are moving. And then the other factors like housing, the prices is very high, which is demotivating the people as well. So these factors, I will say it's true, since prices definitely will be high because we are incurring a lot of cost in order to build the places. We are giving lots of housing for social housing as well, which is subsidized by the government, and the prices is also low. At the same time, we are also selling for the middle income or high income people, so that these subsidies can be covered based on that. So that's what I feel from the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Laila. And Arisha, please?
Yeah. So for me, I feel like as a migrant to Hulhumalé, this study is very personal to me. And Hulhumalé is my home. I also migrated to Hulhumalé in 2008. We were one of the first settlers. So I've seen the city being developed, and it's actually a tremendous journey to be able to witness this. And for me, what I feel like is when, I think you asked a question about climate adaptation and about eroding. So Hulhumalé is actually reclaimed 2 meters above sea level. So compared to all other islands, Hulhumalé is actually more resistant to sea level rising. So that's one of the things that I would like to highlight. And another thing is that this study, for me, I feel like for the work that we do at HTC, it's very important to understand the characteristics of the people living and why people migrate, so we can cater our developments to these demographics. So I think this study was very interesting for us, and we've actually shared with our management as well, and some plans that we are coming up in the future would obviously have these things in consideration.
Right, thank you so much. Well, you kind of touched upon the sort of physical endurance of the structure. So it's tested and it's been evaluated and so on. Right. So yeah, I think there were lots of very important points. Maybe we can, I think most of the questions were sort of addressed to these two ladies. Well, I think the issue of, you know, economic sustainability, you know, who will bear the costs, would be very important. And as mentioned, because the Maldives have already graduated from LDC status, the costs basically have to be borne nationally and by the citizens in one way or another. So and you know, along the way, how to
sort of, accommodate the learning, how to be flexible. I think this is a challenge in many places for this kind of engineering approach. So perhaps you can kind of start with these points, if you have any reactions.
Yeah, okay. I think I would like to start with the second question, with how Maldivians in general are very reluctant to experimentation. So in HTC, we've created a culture of experimenting new things because there has never been a smart city in Maldives. So this is the first. So the first people who are doing this should be experimenting what works, what doesn't work. So usually when we come up with new projects, we usually check the global trends, how it has been done in other countries, how we can localize it, and what our management has been very generous with us is giving us the chance of failing maybe. And what we start with is a pilot project. So for example, for smart parking, we conducted interviews and feedback. We collected feedback from people who use cars and motorbikes, and we did a sample survey of what kind of rates that they would be willing to pay for this service. So we do some level of market research, and what we do is launch it as a pilot project. We'll start with one location, and based on how successful it is, we go for the second phase of that. So most of the smart city projects has been going on a pilot study basis. So and depending on the feedback that we receive from that pilot study, for example, we conduct these things for like around 3 to 6 month period, and then we gather data from that, and based on that we move forward with the actual project. So that's how we actually start with that. And for the cost part, the funding part, we try to collaborate with other partners, and sometimes we get funds, and we actually, being a government-owned enterprise, we have, for bigger loans, we have a sovereign guarantee. So, but mostly HTC projects are funded by HTC, like we can pay for it by ourselves. We are a commercial company, so all of the residential buildings and the commercial, we get rent. We also have a sale of land. So these are some ways that we get a majority of the revenue from. And for the smart city initiatives, what we've focused on mainly was building the infrastructure first. So like I said, the network, we actually charge the operators to ride our network. So that's also another way that we get money from to recover projects like this. And for the cellular towers, also for the mobile operators to put their antennas and everything on the towers, we charge a rent. So rent is one of the main ways that we recover our project costs. And mostly we give our land, sell or lease our land to offices and other government institutions also. So that's where our majority income comes from: land, sale of land and lease of land. Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to add on top of it, for example, if we are building 10-floor buildings, we are just giving to the public entities to build it. However, the first 2 floors should be under the HTC. They have to pay a rent for HTC in order to give for commercial purpose. So that is how we get our income in order to pay our loans. And then as she had mentioned, we do sales of the land as well. And currently we do consultation, or give consultation to the other islands to do the master plan of those islands as well. So this is also some way which we earn money in order to pay the loans. However, as we have highlighted, definitely with some cost we can build a place, and it's a huge cost definitely. However, with a cost, also it is a beneficial to the public. So that's what I want to add.
Yeah, so HTC initially started as a company that provides social housing, but we've recently moved more towards diversification. So HTC is a big team. We have almost like 2,000 staff under us, and we've staff that focus on different areas, such as our planning team. Our planning team can draw the land use plan of other regional islands as well. So, and then we have our technical team, our networks team. So we can also provide networking services to other islands. So Go Beyond initiative is we're moving beyond Hulhumalé. So and we also have 2 other industrial islands that is under our mandate also, which is in the Greater Malé area, which is focusing more on the industrial land where we lease that land to do industrial activities. So that's also another way we earn income. And we've recently trying to move into tourism. So that's also another plan of commercializing. And in addition to that would be green business. So we have a huge nursery with us, and we're trying to sell these plants to resorts because we have that capacity in Hulhumalé. So that's another business model that could earn. And another thing is that we charge a maintenance fee from the residential buildings that we own. So for the management of the buildings, we take some charge. That's also another service that we provide.
Right. So yeah, thank you very much for highlighting the mechanisms for adaptive management and different income generating activities by HTC and by the industries. If I could sort of pick up another question that Carl has raised about to further this migration process, who are the ones to migrate. I understand it's a voluntary sort of a movement. So the ones who can afford to move, they can move. But then there are also questions of people who will be left behind. So how do is HTC and the government sort of plan to kind of maneuver this process?
Yeah, in the case, as Arisha has mentioned previously, we have mostly social housing. So in the case of social housing, everybody can apply to the social housing. So there's a mechanism every time whenever a new buildings comes up, the government portal will open, everybody to apply. So within that, they will filter it out, and then they do some lottery system, and then they identify who is eligible for this kind of So I think ultimately everybody can apply, so no one is being left behind in this scenario.
Just clarification then, of the 80,000, how many are in social housing?
In phase 2 itself, around 6,480 unit itself is social housing. So if we times by 5, it is 35,000 people is almost in social housing in phase 2 itself. And then in phase 1 also there are lots of social housing projects has been done initially. Since we have to pay the loans, the model was changed that we will do some social housing and then the rest will be commercialized basis. So I will say the majority would be in the social housing.
Right, if you would like to jump in.
Okay, I have one very specific.
Yes, please, yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry, a very specific question is about transportation and park. You mentioned parking. It would seem like a missed opportunity if you made it into a car city, right? Does that make sense? In Europe, we talk a lot about 15-minute cities where you can have your work and your home and your entertainment, your schools everywhere within 15 minutes by walk or by bicycle or by some kind of transportation. So I don't know what how your vision is about this in Hulhumalé.
Regarding the transport, is it specifically the motorcycle or the vehicles? Sorry. What exactly your question is it regarding the transport, that the plan which we have? Can you repeat the question again, specifically the question?
I'm not sure.
Repeat the question.
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, so the transportation, do you have I mean, it would seem to be missing an opportunity if you bring cars to this place, right? So what is how long distances are we talking about then? Can people walk? Is there some public transportation and things like that?
Actually, the distance which we are talking is not that far. People can walk. However, what is happening is still there are lack of schools in Hulhumalé, which people are still going to Malé itself. So ultimately, due to that, definitely the public transport or the private transport need to be adapted. So since the bridge was built in 2018, from that time onwards, the vehicles rate has been increased because people are more dependent on their private vehicles. So I think in our presentation also we highlighted there is in the future definitely we have to find a solution for this trafficking, what would happen in the future.
Right, thank you very much. Maybe we can invite questions from the floor, please. Questions, reactions?
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to have witnessed this presentation. I'm an island studies guy, and I have various courses where I teach students about islands, and I usually use an image of Hulhumalé in my slides as an example of an artificial island. So today I can go back and say, okay, if students ask me questions about this island now, I'm better informed. I was also checking Dr. Google, of course, at my service. I think the world's largest artificial island is in Holland. I think it's the Flevopolder. So I was looking at the size of this polder, how many people live there. So you're not quite the largest artificial island yet on the planet, but certainly in relation to the population, I think that you are doing a very big, very radical change to the Maldives. I wouldn't necessarily call it a new Mali. Hulhumalé means new Mali, right? I think, in your language, in the valley, right? Because to me, especially after the bridge has been built, it seems to be more like a suburb of Mali, and that might explain the transport dynamics, right? So it's a new neighborhood attached to your capital city, and perhaps that is the idea, that it's supposed to be a kind of a support infrastructure to the capital city. At least that seems to me the way that it's developing. I'm curious to know whether there are incentives for people to move. So it seems to me that from the way that the survey was presented, 70% of the respondents were happy with the move, but of course the other 30% presumably are not that happy. So what is the real reason of why they are not happy? Is it because they had high expectations of what they were going to find and they were disappointed? Or are there other reasons? Might they have been pushed to move? I don't know. So please let me know. You spoke about Tilafusi. Tilafusi, at least to my knowledge, is a landfill. It's the place where basically a lot of the garbage of Maldives finds itself, right? And there are images of Tilafusi with smoke coming out all the time and fire and so on. So your rendering of Tilafusi on the slide is very, very different from what I expected. So please tell me how this transformation is taking place and whether you are going to be putting your garbage on a different island now, right? Because garbage has to go somewhere. Migration as adaptation, this is a very interesting point that has been raised. I hope that this real-life experiment that's going on in the Maldives does not dissolve and erode the urgency to mitigate climate change. Because if we start to go around saying, okay guys, don't worry about sea level rise, there is a technological solution, all we need is expertise, of course you need a lot of money, and perhaps the Chinese will lend it to you. So don't worry about migration, because the solution is right at your doorstep. I hope we won't start hearing that kind of discourse. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Perhaps very brief reaction from Ayla and Arisha.
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. So I'll try to answer your question. So Hulhumalé definitely is a part of Malé. That's why it's called Hulhumalé, because Malé and so. So government is considering that is Greater Malé area, which consists of Hulhumalé, Villimale, and then Malé itself. And then now Gulifalo and Tilafushi is also part of Greater Malé area. And the question was, is it Tilafushi? Yeah, Tilafushi, okay. Tilafushi definitely is a garbage island, and now, however, since it has been dumping the garbage, and finally it has become to an island, which is now used as a commercial island for warehouses and to build ships and stuff. So it's a commercial island, and recently the government has decided that this Tilafushi and Gulifal will be part of HTC. So from that part onwards, we are now planning to develop a second phase, but not from the garbage anymore, but from the sand pumping. And then from that also, the plan is to escalate or to get money in order to pay for the loans and stuff.
Thank you so much.
Can
Right.
just feedback.
Yes, please.
This is all very interesting. I attend most of his lectures because I'm his wife, and I enjoy learning more about islands, and I studied about islands as well, and I knew about it, but not in this detail. But I have a couple of concerns or questions, call them what you want. But for example, what is happening to the empty houses on Mali? Because people are migrating to the other island. Is something being done with them, or are they just being left empty? Can you make money out of the empty houses, for example? And another concern is the environment. You talk about clean air, for example, or that's all well and good. Maybe it was a novelty at first. What is going to happen when the second phase is over and more people are going in? I'm sure there will be pollution from transport, for example, right? And from all the other things that are going to be built. The cricket stadium, which you said would be for Olympic Games as well. So imagine the amount of people coming. You mentioned tourists. We know from our small country what happens to the environment when all these tourists come in. So are you planning ahead for that, or are you just going ahead with phase 2 because it's planned? And is there job guarantee for people who want to move, or do they still have to wait and see whether there's going to be a job for them? Because that would be one of the incentives maybe to move if there are better jobs offered over there.
Right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think we need to wrap up, so we
I think we can save these questions also, but I wanted to also raise our guiding questions, which were if the success of Hulhumalé could be replicated elsewhere in other atoll countries like Marshall Islands, Tuvalu, Kiribati, and so forth. And if that's the case, what are the inputs that the international community, the national governments can provide? And as there was a decision at the UNFCCC COP the last time to establish loss and damage financial arrangement, and there's a transitional committee to discuss the arrangement to be adopted at the next COP. So I think this kind of discussion can inform this high level negotiation as well. So perhaps we have this set of questions, and feel free to pick any of the questions that.
I had a very simple, quick question. Based on the survey, why was there still concern about the 2 meter, or why is there still concern about sea level rise if it's built 2 meters higher? That was my question.
Right, thank you. Right, okay. So we have quite a few questions, but perhaps we can have 1 minute each from each of you to pick a question that you feel comfortable responding, and hope we can cover all these.
So far as I understand that the IPCC predict 2 meter sea level rise by the end of this century.
I see, so by the end it's a problem,
Yeah,
okay.
So, if
Okay,
I'm correct.
nice quick question, quick response.
Yeah, I have questions about energy and water supply of the Hulhumalé. So many people are coming to there, and then how do you supply energy, electricity, and also water? Do you desalinize the seawater? This is my question.
Yeah, I mean, this was to be a burden. I mean, with the increase of population and tourists coming in, can you provide a quick response to it? And I think we can have, after wrapping up the session, we can still, continue the discussion.
Yeah, in the case of water, definitely we are taking from the sea and then desalinating it and then supplying it via the pipes. So each household will have a pipe, and then a different companies provided at the water supply, which is water supply, we call. And then in the case of electricity, currently we are making a project. The solar panels are now placed so that we can cater the solar energy as well, apart from the real energy, the engine energies. So we are finding a solution for that in order to get.
Yeah, for all the utilities, it's actually mostly government, 100% state-owned enterprises that's providing the services. And before any new development is come, all the utilities are provisioned. And we make sure we have a utilities and services department within HTC also. So we make sure that before anyone moves or new developments, the utilities and everything is set in place. And as for the incentives to move to Hulhumalé, we actually have a master plan that we follow by, which actually didn't happen in Malé, so that's why Malé is so congested. There's no open spaces or anything. So in Hulhumalé we have so many parks and a lot of places for people to be in a community setting. So that's one of the reasons why people actually want to move to Hulhumalé. It's more peaceful, we're surrounded by the ocean, and I feel like in Hulhumalé we get the best of both. We get the urban city life as well as the island life that we want. And another thing is for the people that would move in the future, I think mostly it would be people from the islands. So currently, because of a lot of migration happening to Hulhumalé, the rent prices are somewhat decreasing, so it might be more affordable for people in the islands to move to the Greater Malay region as well. So that's what we're seeing is because of the lack of education, good healthcare services in the islands, more people are just migrating to the Malay region. So that's what I would say the people that would be moving to Hulhumalé.
And one thing which I want to add is regarding the dissatisfaction, I think the question you had. The dissatisfaction, I think, is from the older generation people, because in the island life you will see the community engagement. However, when it comes to urban places, the community engagement decreases. So this is something that the older generation is looking for how they can engage in the community. So we are also finding a way how this can be mitigated in order to keep them in the place. Thank you.
Thank you. Carl, would you like to say a few words within 1 minute?
So the advice when you look at New Year's resolutions is don't try to change everything at once. You know, focus on this, do that, get it right. Then next year you focus on this. I think one of the challenges is you're trying to do everything. And I think that, I mean, I want to be clear, a lot of what you're hearing are all these different questions. We wish you well. This is, you know, we want you to succeed. And there's so many ways you can have trouble. And I think that your system for tracking evidence and trying to figure out if you're on track and how do you adjust, I think that's really important. I think the biggest question I have is financial. And
yeah, right. I think we need to stop here, Carl.
Okay.
Yeah, really, that's a big question.
That's a question.
I think we have to, continue this conversation. So thank you so much for the great panel discussion, and I think we. Thank you so much.
Yeah, feel free to come back with your changes. Well, thank you very much, Nico, for chairing the session nicely, and all the panelists for your very active participation. Now, we are closing the session shortly, but last but not least, on behalf of one of the three sponsoring organizations, Professor Daisuke Sasaki of the Tohoku University will give the closing remarks. Daisuke, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you very much, Nakayama-sensei. My name is Daisuke Sasaki. I'm an associate professor at the International Research Institute of Disaster Science, IRIDeS, at Tohoku University. First of all, as a co-organizer, I would like to thank all speakers and panelists and participants for this side event to IGUTC Osaka 2023, entitled Infrastructure Development in Maldives to cope with climate change, in-country migration to newly constructed island of Hulhumalé. 8 years have passed since the Center for Disaster Risk Reduction 2015-2030 was adopted at the third Human World Conference in Sendai, Japan, in March 2015. The high-level meeting of the General Assembly on the midterm review of the implementation of the Center framework will take place at the United Nations headquarters in New York this coming May. The International Organization for Migration, IOM, stated in their submission to the midterm review of the implementation of the Center framework, the Center framework was the first global agreement on disaster risk reduction to incorporate clear references to mobility and displacement. It is not only recognized the centrality of displacement management in the disaster risk reduction context, but also clearly acknowledged the role of migrants in strengthening prevention and preparedness, in supporting recovery and in promoting resilience to future disaster risk. Thus, it would be no exaggeration to say that research on migration and displacement has greater significance than ever, in the sense that research could contribute to ongoing discussion in the international arena. Our institute, the International Research Institute of Disaster Science, IRIDeS, at Tohoku University, was established in April 2012 1 year after the Great Japan earthquake and tsunami. IRIDeS fully supported the third UN World Conference on Disaster Risk Reduction, and we are continuing various research on disaster science and practical activities focusing on industry, government, academia, collaboration in Japan and abroad to promote the implementation of the center framework. IRIDeS has worked to deepen disaster science while also focusing on the practical aspects of disaster risk reduction. We will continue to develop academic research about migration and displacement in relation to disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation from transdisciplinary perspectives. We look forward to your continued support and collaboration. Thank you so much.
Daisuke, thank you very much for your very encouraging remarks. I believe we can now go for dinner. Thank you very much indeed. The session is closed.